A corrida. Atravesso trilhões de moléculas que se afastam para abrir caminho para mim, enquanto de ambos os lados outros trilhões delas permanecem onde estão. A lâmina do limpa-brisas começa a chiar. A chuva parou. Eu paro. Na esquina, um menino, numa gabardina amarela, segura a mão de sua mãe. Abóbora. Minha abóborazinha. Por vezes, gosto de pensar noutras raparigas, mas a verdade é que se alguma vez me deixasses, rasgaria todo o coração para nunca mais o consertar. Nunca irá haver ninguém como tu. Que embaraço. Poema de amor. Temos imensos fósforos em nossa casa. Guardamos-los ali, sempre à mão. Atualmente, a nossa marca favorita é Ohio Blue Tip, embora costumássemos preferir a marca Diamond. Isso foi antes de descobrirmos os fósforos da Ohio Blue Tip. São excepcionalmente bem embalados, pequenas caixas resistentes com símbolos claros e escuros, em azul e branco, com palavras grafadas a letras com forma de megafone, como se para dizer ainda mais alto ao mundo: eis o fósforo mais bonito do mundo. O seu caule macio de polegada e meia em pinho, coberto por uma cabeça púrpura escura e granulada, tão sóbrio e furioso, teimosamente pronto a eclodir em chamas, iluminando, talvez, pela primeira vez, o cigarro da mulher amada, e depois disso nunca mais foi o mesmo. Tudo isso te daremos. Isso foi o que tu me deste. Eu tornei-me o cigarro e tu o fósforo, ou eu o fósforo e tu o cigarro, ardendo em beijos de combustão lenta rumo ao céu. A partir de Lorca. Papel cor-de-rosa com linhas azuis, muito bonito. Céu azul com grandes nuvens brancas, muito giro. Rosto com grande sorriso, muito interessante. Porquê esse sorriso? Porquê é que estás a sorrir? Papel azul com grandes nuvens brancas, muito bonito. Céu cor-de-rosa com linhas azuis, muito giro. Poeta como uma ave imortal. Um segundo atrás, palpitou o meu coração e eu pensei: esta seria uma péssima altura para ter um ataque cardíaco e morrer a meio de um poema. Depois, confortei-me com a ideia de que ninguém, que eu tenha sabido, alguma vez morreu a meio da escrita de um poema, tal como as aves nunca morrem em pleno voo, acho eu. E para terminar, haiku. Isto foi rápido. Digo, a vida.
Thank you, Marta. I guess I'll stand up also. Excuse me, I don't speak Portuguese, I'm sorry. And I assume and I hope that you speak English or understand English. Although sometimes my English is not so good either. I'm going to start by reading three of the poems that appear in Jim Jarmusch's film Patterson, which you can see tomorrow night if you can stay up for the second show. And the movie is about a young man who drives a bus, a city bus, in the small old town of Patterson in New Jersey, just across the river from New York City. And he drives the bus during the day and he writes poetry. And almost no one knows that he writes poetry, except his the love of his life, this beautiful young woman. So, when Jim started to make this film, he chose some poems of mine that I had written many years ago to be used in the film. And then he told me, Ron, if you want to feel like writing any more for the film, please do. And I thought, no, I can't write poems by a bus driver. But it turned out I could. And so I wrote this one about his experience of driving a bus. It's called The Run. I go through trillions of molecules that move aside to make way for me, while on both sides, trillions more just stay where they are. The windshield wiper blade starts to squeak. The rain has stopped. I stop. On the corner, a boy in a yellow raincoat holding his mother's hand. This bus driver in Jim's film, whose name is Patterson also, he's very much in love with his companion or his wife. We're never quite sure. So he writes this poem for her. Love poem. We have plenty of matches in our house. We keep them on hand always. Currently, our favorite brand is Ohio Blue Tip, though we used to prefer Diamond brand. That was before we discovered Ohio Blue Tip matches. They are excellently packaged, sturdy little boxes with dark and light blue and white labels, with words lettered in the shape of a megaphone, as if to say even louder to the world, here's the most beautiful match in the world. Its 1.5-inch soft pine stem capped by a grainy dark purple head, so sober and furious and stubbornly ready to burst into flame, lighting, perhaps, the cigarette of the woman you love for the first time, and it was never really the same after that. All this will we give you. That is what you gave me. I become the cigarette and you the match, or I the match and you the cigarette, blazing with kisses that smolder toward heaven. Actually, that's a love poem that I wrote for my wife 40 years ago. Pumpkin. Oh, my little pumpkin. I like to think about other girls sometimes, but the truth is, if you ever left me, I'd tear my heart out and never put it back. There'll never be anyone like you. How embarrassing. And then I'm going to read two more just earlier poems, because you read them in Portuguese, so I'll read them in English. Poet as Immortal Bird. A second ago, my heart thump went, and I thought, oh no, this would be a bad time to have a heart attack and die in the middle of a poem. Then I took comfort in the idea that no one I have ever heard of has ever died in the middle of writing a poem, just as birds never die in mid-flight, I think. And the last one is called haiku. You know, haiku's a little poem, has 3 lines, sometimes. Haiku. That was fast. I mean, life. That's a poem you write when you get to be old, you know? And you read this poem to young people, and they go, oh. And you read it to old people, they go, So now into uncharted territory. I'm going to read now, the rest of the poems are, and don't be scared, there aren't that many, they're short. I used to go to poetry readings all the time, and I would be in the audience looking at the poet, and the poet would read, and then he'd put a poem down, and he'd read, he'd put a poem down. And I started to count the number of pages in his hand. Oh no, he is, and then he'd get to the end, and I think, and he's going to read the last poem. And he'd read that, and he'd say, and now I'm going to read from my new book. It was horrible. So don't be scared. This doesn't take that long. All of these poems were written in the last couple of years up in a part of the United States, the state of Vermont. It's a very beautiful mountainous state up near Canada. And it's really not like the rest of the United States, politically and otherwise. And it's a place I've gone for many years in the summer, and finally my wife and I, we built a little house there many years ago, and so we spend a lot of time there. And near me, we're surrounded with forest. Near me is a cabin, a very small cabin, on a beautiful pond. And I have the use of that cabin. The person who lives there lets me go and use the cabin. And so for the last few years, every October, I've gone to the cabin in the morning with a notebook and a pen. And I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to write. I don't have a program. And I just go and I sit down alone in the cabin with the woods and the pond and the sky. And I just sit there. And then finally, it's very boring to just sit there. So I start to write something. And I've written, over the last few years, I've written over 100 poems there. Some of them really bad, and some of them less bad. And so I'm going to read you some selections. So these are all poems written in this little cabin, alone, surrounded with forest, and pretty much with silence. Big cabin. It's actually a small cabin. Big cabin. I like it here in this cabin. I like looking out the window at the pond and the trees beyond, and with quiet inside. 60 years ago, I was a boy with a baseball glove in Oklahoma, looking down at it and knowing I would give it away and never buy a new one. And truly, we use italics to put electricity into words. You know how words in italics, they look, okay. And truly, we use italics to put electricity into words. Then we plug lamps into the words. That's how we light our homes. Really? Chickadee. A chickadee is a very small bird. Beautiful little bird. Chickadee. The chickadees went away a few months ago. Delightful little things. Now they're back, chattering away. Hey, wait for me. I'm the biggest chickadee in the world. Glump, glump. I like that one. Thin. My skin has grown thinner as the paper on which I write. Sometimes I accidentally cut myself and don't even know it. A thin line of blood is there. It's hard to talk to. People. People are so fucking nutty. It's amazing that we get through the day without one of them undoing the parts of his body and then putting them back together in the wrong places right in front of us. Sandwich. I'm in a cabin about 300 yards from my house in the woods on a cold, damp day, sky overcast bright gray. At home, in the fridge, is sliced ham I will put between 2 slices of bread with mustard and raise the ensemble to my mouth and go chomp. A chomp 300 yards away. Hope. Is there any hope for you or anyone else? Sure there is. But hope for what? Hope isn't for anything. It's just a big bunch of feeling. This next poem mentions someone named Fairfield Porter. He was an American painter who was a friend of mine, and he could have been my grandfather. He was older than me, but he's a wonderful artist. He died in 1975. This is called In the Winter of 1969-70. In the winter of 1969 to 70, I went out to an old shed behind Fairfield Porter's house and fired up the coal stove, cleared a spot on a workbench, sat down, and started translating the poetry of Blaise Cendrars. Sometimes the room got so hot, I'd open the door wide open, and outside snow was falling. It was one of the happiest times of my life. This one mentions the French poet, surrealist poet, but really just a love poet named Paul Éluard. And it's called Paul Éluard. Paul Éluard said, "There is another world, but it's in this one," or something to that effect. I would say, everything is odd enough as it is, or something to that effect. My handwriting, for example, and my hand writing. Hand, say hello to Paul Éluard. It's good. It's good to have a heater you can hold your hands in front of to get them warm enough to hold a pen to write. It's good to have a heater. And to feel the warmth spreading into your knees and down your shins, though you can't do much with them in a sitting position. They're just down there being shins. This next one's a metaphysical poem. I love those. Ticking and talking. When people say, time is running out, I see an alarm clock with a bell on top and with arms and legs dashing out the door of a room in which time has stopped, reminding the human race that we are running out. I carry this idea to a corner of the room and set it down gently. I don't want to wake it up. Then I tiptoe away. Sweeping away. What I want to do is to forget everything I ever knew about poetry and sweep the pine needles off the cabin roof and watch them fly away into this October afternoon. The pen is mightier than the sword, but today the broom is mightier than the pen. Poem. You're here. And if you relax for a moment, your back and other parts will arrive, and you can be together with yourself. A little happiness. Every time I lick my fingers to turn the page, I get a little bit of what I had for dinner. It's still in my fingers. Paging Dr. Freud, paging Dr. Freud. I don't understand why men like to look at, to caress, and to kiss women's breasts, which, after all, are mostly sacks of fat. Why do we want to kiss sacks of fat? The porcupine. You know what a porcupine is? Yeah. Okay. The porcupine. If you've ever come face to face with a porcupine, you know how beast-like they look. But to the porcupine, you are of very little interest, like a stone on the ground. Though, unlike a stone, you wave your arms and you shout, "Hey!" The porcupine swivels his head and waddles a few feet away. He isn't very funny. Wristwatch. I've just written 6 or 7 poems in about half an hour in a cabin on a pond with raindrops. Maybe I should just sit here for a while. Let some more time pass so my wife will think I've been working hard. See that? Some time just went past, but so quietly you might have missed it. It morphed into the sky. Oh, look, another one. It came out of my wristwatch and morphed into the sky. Almost statue. Am I going to end up liking myself? It could go either way. But is it important, liking oneself? Well, it helps, but it involves a lot of self. What would I be without myself? Maybe a statue. But what's the point of being a statue? Oh, maybe I could be part me, part statue. Is that possible? Yes, for a psycho or a saint. We just moved our clocks again this year. This is called Timex Blur. Timex is a mark, a brand of watches, very cheap American watches. They're great, by the way. Because when you lose them, you don't care. This is called Timex Blur. I was going to complain about how irritating it is to have to change one's clock twice a year and not understand why. But sunlight just came down and hit the pond and my brain at the same time. Down under. Ooh, down under. People are wont to repeat the old advice,
Live every day as if it were the last day of your life. The last day of my life? What? I'd be frantic, jumping around like a kangaroo in boxing gloves and punching the air, trying to fight off whatever. What people really mean is be fully engaged with life, like a kangaroo without boxing gloves. Shanghai cutout. Charlie Chaplin is on the wall up near the ceiling, a paper cutout of him about 10 inches tall and hinged at the joints in his little tramp costume, held up there by a nail through a hole in his hat. I stayed at the Astor House Hotel in Shanghai as he once did, though, of course, it was a different Shanghai, and I was a different cutout. The next one is called haiku. I seem to want to write poems called haiku. Haiku. This one has 3 lines. First, calm down. Next, stay that way for the rest of your life. That poem makes me nervous. I don't know if I can do that. You know? Infusion. Ooh, it feels cold in this room until I go outside. Is that a metaphor? Waiting for its meaning? Yeah, probably. Isn't everything waiting for its meaning? So go ahead, infuse everything with meaning. See how far it'll get you. People versus leaves. Boy, this is appropriate. People versus leaves. Clever and powerful people have taken control over my life. But for some reason, I don't care. For I have that pile of leaves over there. Those people are wasting their lives day after day. Oh, for a moment, I feel sorry for them. But then I look at the leaves, and I don't care what happens to humanity. But if humanity disappears, who will read this poem? Fuck. More about Whitehead. This Whitehead, the British philosopher Alfred North Whitehead. More about Whitehead. Was it Whitehead who said that there is no distinct line between one's body and the air around it? That along the boundary, atoms are constantly being exchanged? I knew one of his students, Ann Porter. Maybe some of his atoms stuck to her, and decades later got transferred to me. Oh, what a charming thought. And idiotic. Auditorium. No telephone, no computer, no people, no cars, no TV or radio, not even a refrigerator to shudder and clunk off. Just the sound of water, flat with a few ripples. That is, no sound of water. For a moment, I hear its no soundness, and then a slow wave of chuckling, an auditorium of children all hearing the same joke in their heads. Ah, a happy pond. Top knot and all. You know, the Japanese top knot, the hairdo, the men. Top knot and all. The reeds at the pond's edge, bending and waving in the wind, a long running row of them, like in a black and white Japanese film. And here comes a sword and two fierce eyes in the head of a man who flies up and vanishes into the air. Ducks. It makes me sad to think that I'm so petty. Where'd those ducks go? Off to the left, I think, then south, for sure. I'm starting to get nervous about following them. I should leave them alone. I should leave myself alone. Chinese twins. You used to hear about Siamese twins. These are Chinese twins. When I was in China, I had the sudden desire to be in a cabin in Vermont, remembering the moment when I felt that way. And now I'm here in the cabin, but without a desire to be in China. Not at this moment anyway. I don't need that desire, because the two moments were just connected like Siamese twins who have just learned how to talk to each other. The triumph of beavers. This pond has these beavers that swim around. The triumph of beavers. Is there any evidence that a surrealist ever saw a beaver? I know it's a trivial question, but I'm wondering. I imagine the face of a surrealist and the face of a beaver as they suddenly see each other. They turn and run. That night, the surrealist has horrible nightmares of the face of the beaver. Now, the beaver sleeps pretty well. And I have two more to read. I actually was in China last year, and I was invited there to, as part of a international poetry festival. And it's in China, everything is big. The poets, they publish a book, and it has a print run of, only 50,000 copies. I had a poem in a Beijing poetry magazine. It had 1 million readers. A poetry magazine, 1 million readers. And so I gave this poetry reading, and as part of it, it was a group reading, and some Chinese and some Americans, 2 Americans. And, it was a small audience. There were only 400 or 500 people there. And they were all Chinese. They all looked amazing. And they sat there through the whole reading and they're utterly riveted on every word. They looked every word. And so at the end of the reading, suddenly a large number of them began to run toward the stage. And I thought, shit, I've got to get out of here. Well, this is not good. But they were all actually very attractive young women. So I thought, well, maybe I'll stay. And so, and there was, you'll see here, this is called High Whoosh. When the crowd of Chinese girls clamored for my autograph, I gave it happily, stunned, in a sort of calligraphic script, as if I were writing in Chinese on a long scroll that called for a long unrolling of my name, ending with a fluid whoosh across the sky, and up I went into the stars. And this is the last one. Actually, I have an 800-page book. This is called Telegram. This morning about 4, I was lying in bed thinking about how I'd be here in this cabin, scribbling away, and how the lines go as far as the words make them go. Finally, I got up and went down and made oatmeal, toast, and tea, jasmine, to put a little bit of China into me and wake me up like a real human who does whatever he has to do, like stop. Thank you. Oh. Thank you. I want to say one more thing. I want to thank you for coming tonight. It was very kind of you. And I want to thank Antonio Costa and all the people who work on this film festival. It's a very complicated endeavor. I mean, I can't believe they can organize this thing. And it's really unbelievable. And everyone, I have to say, I've never been to Portugal before, but I'm stunned by how absolutely courteous and kind and pleasant everyone I've met has been. It's really, I come from New York, where, you know, not everyone is quite so perfect. And it's really been great. So, and I hope you come to see Jim Jarmusch's film tomorrow night if you can, because it's I know, okay, I'm associated with it and I'm prejudiced and all that, but it actually is a very beautiful film. And so I hope you can come then. Okay? All right. Thank you.